Happy Wednesday, everyone. I missed last week, so I feel like it's been a million years since I've been back with you. So happy Wednesday. I am Kari the Mortician, and I'm here to chat about all things funeral related or any questions for me about being a funeral director, an embalmer, you name it, lay it on me. So welcome and thanks for joining. Hope you have your cup of coffee to chat along with us. So I have some questions. So last time we were on here, good morning, everyone. Last time we were on here, someone shared about their friend who had lost an infant to what would be sometimes referred to as SIDS, is now often referred to as like positional asphyxiation or, kind of an unexplained, there's no telltale markers as to why the death occurred. And so we had talked over the course about, how things are going. They were going to be doing a memorial at their home and kind of how everything was. Oh, Robin, yay, you've got your coffee with Kari mug with you this morning. Awesome. If anybody else wants a coffee with Kari mug, go to my website, karinorthey.com, and shop. They're all there. So, and Mr. Gab has a beer. It's a little early for a beer here. So Dylan had followed up to let me know everything had gone good, that, she shared some, or he, I really don't even know if Dylan's a he or she. Isn't that weird? If with some pictures, and then had said there was a few things that they thought could have been done better by the funeral home. So of course I said, well, what were they? Let's check this out. So one of the things that had upset the family was that they had the baby for 9 days, and it wasn't until the afternoon before the funeral that they called the mother and told her the headband she provided wouldn't cover the autopsy scar, and that she would need to provide some sort of head covering last minute. So the reason they may have just said it before is because they didn't get the baby dressed until the day before. This is often the case. We don't want to dress someone and then have them sit for 9 days. So a lot can happen. Leaking can occur, purging, all sorts of different things. So without that body covered up, we can see changes that might be happening. We can see any situations we may need to address. If there's any skin slip happening, anything like that. So we would wait until closer to the visitation service to dress the person. This is for anyone, whether it's an infant or not. So typically we will wait until kind of in order of when things are happening, we would be addressing them. So that is not out of the ordinary. It's not like they were just discarding the child for a week and not paying attention. So the clothing probably was with the baby and they just went to dress and realized that something didn't work. So that is not out of the ordinary at all. Good morning, everybody. Oh, and I'm going to just finish Dylan's comments here and then I'll get to your questions. They also had music that she wanted played the day before and never tested to see if it would play until the actual service. And there were a ton of complications around technology. So that definitely is one thing that I always tell a family to make sure they bring things in ahead so that we can check them out. One of the biggest problems that can happen is someone brings in a video that they've worked putting together, and they bring it in right before the service and it doesn't play because the formats are wrong or for whatever reason, and then we just can't do it. And so that's why people are prompted to bring things in early. So yes, they should have made sure the songs played and made sure everything lined up and made sure this will happen too, that someone brings you a CD and they say, oh, I burned this CD. Number 1 is Amazing Grace. Number 2 is Go Rest High on the Mountain, because that's what it appeared in their, burning program. but they never listen to it afterwards and hand it to you. So then you go play number one and it's actually go, let's try number two is Amazing Grace. So always checking those songs to make sure, one, they play in their entirety, and two, they are what they're supposed to be. So there is things that we can do to make sure that things do run more smoothly. Shelley says, I'm single and alone. Everyone else is deceased. I know I want cremation. Can I be buried on top of my mother's grave? It's my grandmother's plot. So Shelley, one, depending on your state, you'll need to figure out who's going to sign for your cremation. If you can sign ahead, or if you're going to have your next of kin, we'll have to figure out who your closest relation next of kin, or if you need to pick a designated person in charge of your funeral, if that's allowed in your state. And as long as there's only one person on the grave so far, on your mom's grave, then you should be able to be buried on her grave. However, you'll need to talk to the cemetery, make sure it's acceptable in their rules. My niece lost twins. They were cremated and put in the same urn. She hasn't ever been right since, so I feel for them, praying for them. Thank you, Robert. Thanks, Kathy, so much. So I always wanted to ask if embalmers ever pop pimples post-mortem in order to improve appearance of a deceased. Yes, we are the post-mortem pimple poppers. Goodness. Oh, that show, Dr. Pimple Popper. Oh. But yes, so we're going to try and clear the skin of any, even if there's a scab, it's easiest if we peel that scab and work with the fresh skin underneath, not cosmetizing over a scab. We'll try and clear acne, blackheads out, which sometimes gets really gross if someone's been very dirty and gross. So it just happens. It's part of what we do. But yes, we are the post-mortem pimple poppers. What books do you recommend to learn more about mortuary science? There's a lot of different ones from different people that have worked in the business. Kevin Watt's newest book that he has out just as some of his stories. I'm trying to off the cuff. Chelsea Tolman has a book about her start in the business. Caitlin Dottie's books about getting started in the business. A lot of those where it's getting started in the business are good ones. So, head to some of those, and they're all available online, and check those out. Thanks so much. Oh, Surrey, England. I would like to be in Surrey, England right now. That would be nice. Do you play some song requests in funerals? Yes. I mean, we play what they want us to play. Oh, Meredith, if you're in Delaware, I don't think I have a Delaware viewer who's interviewed me yet. So if you're interested to do a Zoom video with me and ask me 3 questions, drop me an email, Kari@KariNorthey.com. So I'm going to be posting, watch probably later today in the comments area on my chat, or whatever you call it, on YouTube. I'll post a map of what states I've already done. Do your own fleet of coaches, or is there a funeral industry rental center for vehicles needed with a multi-person funeral? That's a great question, Jimmy. So a lot of funeral homes have all their own fleet, basically. Some don't use hearses anymore even. They have like minivans that have a emblem thing on the back window, but a lot of places have all their own vehicles. If you need extra, there are liveries or vehicle rental companies spread out and around that you can rent hearses, and a driver will come with them sometimes, or you can rent limousines, things like that. Back in the day, everybody used limos, and everybody, kind of had all these things that they would use, but that has fallen by the wayside, the formality of some of what we do for funerals. Jennifer asks, what's the best mortuary school to attend in the state of New York? I don't really give any stamp of approval or disapproval for any school per se. As long as it's accredited by the national board, that's the one thing you want to check into. But you can attend so many schools online now, so it doesn't really matter where you're located. So check into those as well. Natalie's asked, my sister passed away several years ago. Her hands looked flattened. Why? I think you posted this on one of the videos too, Natalie. It's hard for me to tell specifically. This will happen sometimes if a person kind of deflates, and it's hard to explain, where maybe they had some moisture, like edema a little bit in their hands, and then it kind of comes down. We got a gravity effect, or maybe they had to wrap her hands. So sometimes what'll happen is your hands splay like this. When you're embalming, they just naturally go out. And so we will take, after embalming, like a piece of cotton and just wrap around the hand so that as the tissue sets, that hand is together. However, it might press a little bit on the top of the hand to kind of flatten. So it's maybe a positioning thing that's why. Hard to tell unless I could see for sure, and then maybe give a better guess. Yeah, Elizabeth, there was a shooting at a funeral. I think the death toll or injured is up to 17. I heard this morning it's higher. So it's quite crazy, the whole thing. Do you have to have your mouth wired shut with that needle through the gum? It seems painful. Well, you're dead, so you're not feeling it. But we do close and secure the mouth in some way. I don't use the wire in the gum because to me it does seem painful. It seems mean to do it. I don't know if mean's the right word, but it's just not an action I'm comfortable doing. So I suture with a cord and a thread and tie up the mouth. Brianna, that's awesome. Thank you. Oh, the strangest request I've ever had. That's one of the number one questions I get asked. And to me, there's no limit to strangeness because, what is strange anymore, really? Let me think if anything pops in my mind that's new that I haven't talked about. What if you accidentally poked a hole while piercing the body with a trachea? How would you manage it? So that will happen sometimes, especially maybe a newer embalmer, and you just kind of lose control, or you're not in getting things right where you need to, or maybe you're hitting something and then it pops through and you can maybe stick the trocar out the back accidentally. You would just use another trocar button to fill that hole or suture that hole. So it's kind of the worst case scenario with that, but you just can do it. So it does happen every once in a great while. You're welcome, Jennifer. Yes, exactly, honey. Some do different things. People sometimes place illegal items in the casket with the body. Guns, drugs. Could the funeral home be cited for transporting illegal drugs or firearms in the hearse, or would family be liable? That is a great question. There was actually a situation with that I read some news articles on. I want to say it was last year, and I think it was with drugs. Somebody had put drugs in a casket. They were found, and the funeral home didn't have knowledge that the family had put them in, but I don't know. But they were trying to go after the funeral home as being liable. I think it's ignorance. Like, I am not standing at the casket the whole time. So somebody can come up and put anything in that casket without my knowledge. So it's kind of a slippery slope. So should we sit and watch what everybody's putting in the casket? It's not our deceased. They belong to the family still. It's a casket they purchased, even though I'm in charge of the deceased until they're laid to rest. Everything belongs to that family. So I think it's a big gray area that you could probably argue either way. Now, if we've got 10 kilos of cocaine or something, and I don't even know how much 10 kilos of cocaine, it just sounds like a big number. If there was just like a brick of cocaine or something, or, large quantity, then maybe that would be suspect. But if there's maybe one gun, or there's, like a dime bag of something, or then I think that, for somebody to think, to know, to call the police, to come and to look, who knows who's going to make that phone call. So I think if it is found and there's something going on, then there was something bigger going on maybe. Hey, Andrew in New York. If a deceased has false teeth, would they be worn or an alternative placed in the mouth to fill it out? It's 6 1/2 dozen the other. A lot of times we don't get the denture until after we've done the embalming. So we would use a dental replacement, like the mouth former or some cotton, because we don't even get the dentures. Or sometimes somebody hasn't even worn their dentures for a couple months. They're super emaciated, super thin, and the dentures look huge and clunky in their mouth. So we will then use the mouth former and some cotton to create a more natural look to their mouth, because sometimes those dentures are just way too big for what their form of their face is at the time of death. Have you ever received any ship-ins from abroad? If so, have you noticed any significant differences in terms of how the deceased was embalmed? Had anything ever surprised you? Definitely received some ship-ins from a lot of different countries. It's too early. I don't think I slept much last night. Definitely difference in embalming. There's not the same process in every country. Every country doesn't have the fluid sources or the preservatives that we have. And there's often a huge delay in time, where there was one time I was trying to get a gentleman back from Cambodia. He was murdered over there. And after 9 days, we still didn't even have anything in place. Like, it was just trying to, they left him in the apartment they found him in for a while until they could do a investigation. So we had the police involved, which means then I had the funeral home, the police, the consulates, everybody. Like, you just have to involve them all. And trying to get him released took weeks, because they investigated and then they had to do an autopsy and then they had to see if they could release and get him back to it. It took forever. So by the time he got back, I'm guessing his condition was not that great, but it was a funeral home I was filling in at, and I wasn't there when he actually got back because so much time had passed. I've had people from Romania and Mexico and Germany and all sorts of countries. So its conditions vary. And I think that time lapse is one of the biggest situations that plays into it. So it's not even just embalming, it's just the huge time lapse that happens. Thanks for the love from Boston. Good morning from North Carolina. Can anyone start their own cemetery on their own private property without having to go through all the red tape that's a commercial cemetery? It depends on your township, county, state. So everyone is going to have their own rules and regulations as to what you have to do to establish a private cemetery. I think it's Kentucky. Like, anybody can basically bury somebody in their front yard. Don't quote me. I think it's Kentucky, though. I was just reading about this the other day. And so it really depends on where you are and everything. It'll go on your land, on your property contracts and deeds. And so it does affect your resale value. It affects everything, because you're always telling people, I have a dead person on my land. Maybe it increases because somebody wants that, but it definitely has to be on there. So you would have to check into where you are and what the rules are. Good morning from Iceland. So Iceland, I've been told I need to go to Iceland because it's supposed to be super fabulous, but expensive to go there. Not to get there, but to eat there. And I just was listening to the Crime Junkie podcast about the one murder that was there. I couldn't remember her name, but obsessed with Crime Junkie, guys, totally. Mr. Gab is asking, I want to fix up my mom's grave, but there is a thick piece of a plant in her grave, and the only way to fix it is to cut it with a chainsaw. Is it disrespectful to use a chainsaw in a cemetery? No. You're just trying to better the property. You're trying to clean up around her area. People sometimes plant things when somebody dies because they're beautiful, but they grow. and then they encroach, and then they start covering everything and growing everywhere. So, get in there and do what you need to do. If anybody, maybe call the cemetery first and just say, hey, I want to clean up around my mom's grave, and I'm going to be bringing in a chainsaw. Just if anybody calls, here's what's going on. Do we remove cancers on the skin and things like that? Same thing. Yes, we will, just like the acne, we would remove maybe, large growths, things of that nature. Anything that was substantial, we would have a discussion with the family first, because you're getting into needing to cut things out of the skin and a little more restoration afterwards. So we would need to talk to the family before doing that, especially if it's necrotic tissue. So it's dead tissue, it's smelly and gross and rotting. We want to get that out, because that's going to continue to be smelly, gross, and rotty, whether we embalm or not. So often you just cut that necrotic tissue out, treat the area, dry it, and then restore that area with wax or other fillers. Why do some cemeteries require vaults? Recently buried my father-in-law and asked about it, and they looked puzzled. It depends on the country and where you are. There's countries that it's not common to use vaults. Here in America, it's common that a cemetery requires them. One, it stabilizes the ground above, because after a little while, when that ground space kind of caves in and moves in around the casket, it would sink up above, and you get these big sinkholes and things. So the vault displaces that space of soil, and you don't get that sinking like you would without the vault. And then it also encases the casket down below, so you don't get the pressure built in around the casket. So it's kind of a twofold why people require a vault. It's just what it is. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but Linda says she had a child buried in our front yard in a house they rented in West Virginia. How did you feel about that? Did it creep you out at all? Did you have any little ghost stories while you were staying there? No. So Mark, if someone's buried at your house, you can't dig them up. It's a grave that cannot be messed with. So everything that happens has to happen around it. They don't own the person. That grave space is forever they're marked and sacred, essentially. Thank you, guys. All right, Lottie had asked me a question. Was wondering if you could answer this. I'm so tired of hearing people saying that they are putting cause of death as COVID-19 when people are dying of something else, heart attack, cancer, etc., because they get money for that. I know this is ridiculous, but maybe can you explain how and what has to be done to fill out a death certificate? I would think it would be illegal and moral, unethical, and if they were doing this, someone would step in. Hope this makes sense. So we get into a lot of politics and things discussing this, but I will tell you that yes, I know way too many examples of this happening, that someone was not COVID positive or did not have any symptoms of COVID, and they died in maybe an accident. And last week there was a news story down in Indiana about a gentleman that died in, I think a motorcycle accident. And it says, and his death was listed as blunt force trauma and COVID. And it was like, what, how does that even? So we do hear that this is happening. If somebody dies, they're not going and then testing them always afterwards, seeing if they had COVID or not. Just by maybe some of the symptoms, they're saying, well, they probably had COVID, so we're just going to put it down. This isn't happening every single time, obviously, but this has happened. What the benefit is, I don't know. All I know is the reports from many funeral directors across the world that this is happening. So take it for what it is. People are dying of COVID-19. They are dying from complications from COVID-19. the clotting factors, the respiratory issues that it induces, and just what it does to your internal organs. So even somebody that recovers now may have complications later from what happened while they were severely affected by COVID-19. So it's a huge, big thing there's so much more studies that need to be done for us to find out everything. But yes, that is happening, Laddie, and I don't know why. No idea. No idea. What would you call your job? I am a freelance funeral director. So actually, that's what next week's 2-minute video is on, is freelance versus on-site, and a few of those differences. Is it possible to have a public or family viewing when reburying a person after exhumation? That's a good question. It's going to depend on the condition of the individual. We're not going to know until we get them up and out of the casket what they look like, what their condition, if there's anything we could do to make them viewable again at that time. So we would have to really see if just scrubbing off mold allows us to have a viewing. If, so we would have to see condition. Do you have a forest lawn in your area where you live in? I don't think we have a forest lawn cemetery right here. No. Any trouble with animals digging in cemeteries in your area? I know. Sorry, she's popping in. No troubles with animals in our area. Badgers sometimes give us fits. Oh my gosh, badgers. That's funny. Do we even have badgers here? I don't think do we have badgers? I've never even seen a badger live and in person. Ever, I don't think. Bobby Carter asked me, what would you be doing if you weren't working in the field you're working in? Oh, I think I would still be working around death somehow. I have always been interested in forensics, either forensic psychology or psychiatry or anthropology, something along that nature, either why people kill or how they kill, or working with the deceased after and pathology somehow and studying all of that. It fascinates me. It's such an unknown, but there's so much science to it. So I like detective work too. I feel like I can stalk down anything online, anything at all, anyone, I can find you. Not everybody, but so I kind of like the challenge of all of it. So I feel like I would be working around or in something to do with that field somehow. I don't know. You seem to be pretty clued up about the human mind, Kari. You have made me think a lot. Well, I guess that's good. I like how people think. I like trying to figure out thoughts and trying to get ahead of people's needs. So I'm meeting things before they have to ask for them. So I feel like that's a lot of psychology behind that. Do you have to cut the back of clothing to put them on the body? No, you don't have to. But a lot of embalmers or prep staff find that they do, for one, ease of dressing the person, and two, just because it lays better often. So it just depends. Holly asks, how long do you have to wait before a headstone can be placed? You can order and get one going right away. Here in Michigan, you can order it, but it can't be placed until the foundation is set. And the foundation has to wait until it's warm enough to pour the concrete foundation for it to set up and then bring in the headstone to place. So it's typically, you might get some weather in like March or April where it's warm enough for a few days that you can do some foundations. But I would say more between April and like October are when headstones are set here in our area. And then through the winter, they can always be ordered so that they're ready to go once spring comes. Is a funeral director allowed to refuse a visit viewing due to the state of a body? Example, bad car accident, and their face or body is practically unrecognizable. Yes, they can refuse to do a public viewing. A family has a right to see their loved one, and they can't really be denied that right. But a funeral home can say that, like, liability wise, they don't want to show somebody to the family. So they may have you sign a whole bunch of papers if you really want to see the person. I would always say, well, at least maybe I can allow you to see a hand if there's so much trauma, but it's got to be a private thing depending on what the situation is. So you've got to look, it's the huge liability of the funeral home depending what the situation is. Thank you, Kari. Because of you, after my mom passed away, I paid for my arrangements. I find it very comforting knowing my family won't have to make these decisions. I went with cremation. That's awesome. That's awesome to know there's something in place for them. We call it like the greatest gift you can give your family is having something in place so they're not starting from scratch and guessing. Oh, Peg wants to play one of her own pieces of music that she wrote at her service. I think that's awesome. In case of an internal bleeding prior to death, would you attempt to embalm through carotid, or would you straight away proceed to 6-point and treating tissue hypodermically? No, I would always start from the carotid. I would always go with, plan A, that you hope for a 1-point, and see what areas don't get the distribution and then go for there, because, you never know what you're going to run into. And I would never jump to a 6-point and raise vessels you don't know for sure you need to raise. Let's see, one more question. Why are they called pallbearers? That's a great question. So a lot of the origination of this term, pallbearers, came from people that bared the pall. So in the Catholic faith, the big white sheet or cloth that covers the casket is called a pall. This is representative of cloaking the person in white again, just like they did in their baptism. So the people that put that on were the pall bearers. They also became the people that carried the casket, and then the tradition kind of went out. But that's as far as I know of the origination of the term pallbearers. Are you allowed to change a headstone legally? It depends who owns the grave space, because that is who owns the headstone. So you can, as long as you are the proper owner of that space and of that headstone. If that answers your question, Mike. Just because, let's say I had my mom's headstone and someone else came along and just put a new stone there. Well, it would be considered theft because they'd be stealing from me. So that headstone is covered under my homeowner's insurance because I purchased it on a grave that I own for my parents and was in charge of. And so if it disappeared, that would be considered theft and could be an insurance claim. And then I could replace it. But if somebody came in and put a stone on there, it'd be like coming in and putting a couch in my house that wasn't mine and I didn't want there. Same thing. So it'd be awkward and weird, but I can see maybe if a family is battling against each other that they want to order different ones. So, all right, guys, well, I'm going to cut it off for this week. Thank you for the questions. By all means, email me questions, post questions and comments, and I'll try and get to them next week. I feel like we always fill up with so many comments while we're chatting. I don't get back to as many from last week. So if you have a really pressing question, email it to me. That is the best, most direct way to get a question to me. And over the course of a few days, I will respond to you at some point. Either I'll tell you I'm going to discuss it on a coffee chat, or I will respond to you directly. So make sure if you have something weighing on your heart, weighing on your mind, or an emergent situation that maybe a death has occurred and you have a question, shoot me an email, Kari@KariNorthey.com. Thanks, guys, for joining. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bunch of new videos coming out. I've been editing. So if you want to join me with your own coffee with Kari mug, Kari@KariNorthey.com, go to shop, check it out. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.